Bakersfield AIDS Project is a local nonprofit organization dedicated to providing quality, compassionate care to persons in Kern County who are living with HIV/AIDS. It is also committed to providing safe spaces for our LGBTQ community and as well as housing for people who are hospice stages and or who need transitional AIDS housing. I lost my brother Ricky to AIDS in 1992, and that time opened my eyes up to the needs of people who have HIV in our county. Throughout this time period, I have learned a lot. I have learned a lot about programs, about the importance of advocacy, about the importance of standing with others who are vulnerable and who others most often will not stand with. I believe that Bakersfield AIDS Project is important because it helps people in our community find support, find compassion, find a family even when their own families do not stand alongside of them. We are so blessed to live here in the United States of America. We are so blessed to have programs like HOPWA, like Ryan White, like ADAP. With the decisions that are being made currently and the undoing of many different bills, many different action items that we had before, the progress that we have is now of great concern, not only to people who are infected, but also to in the areas of prevention. When we have things like PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, when we have treatment for our positives, we know that it makes a difference in prevention, and prevention works. But without funding, without telling people who are representing us what the important things are, how it affects our American families, we do not have answers for how things are going to be. And currently, with the upcoming leaders that we have, it is very, very confusing and very scary, and we don't have those securities that we had before under the previous leadership. And so it is so important. Bakersfield AIDS Project is 100% volunteer. This January we are 25 years old. We have no paid staff, including myself, and it is because we know the value and the sacredness of all of our loved ones. When they are infected, we are affected. When we are out there advocating for prevention, for our young people to have the comprehensive sex education in our schools like they have the right to have, when we're out there telling people how to access the resources that are available, that's what's important. And I appreciate you guys, because it is only through the generosity of the community members like yourselves that Bakersfield AIDS Project has become 25 years old this January. When we have leadership in our community, when we have bills that are being proposed, when we have legislation, when we have leaders, soon to be our president, that do not speak out on behalf of all of their constituents, on behalf of all of our peoples, on behalf of those that need and are so marginalized, need that voice, need that leadership, need that protection. It is a scary time for us all. And so, as the Bornsteins called for, a softer, safer world, we are responsible for that. And I want to thank you guys for being here today, for being the faces to advocate for those that need that advocacy. I want to thank you guys for standing and for caring and for looking for compassion, looking for leadership, and calling out to our leaders that we need you on our side.
The Bakersfield Burrito Project feeds the hungry and homeless every Sunday of Old Town Kern, East Bakersfield, Oildale, a hot burrito, rain or shine. Burrito Project every time. Without our volunteers, we couldn't do this every Sunday. We actually do this 54 times a year, Thanksgiving and Christmas, unless Christmas falls on a Sunday, of course. But we're out there every time, rain or shine. And a lot of groups don't do that because they do it monthly. Weekly is best because we're out there meeting a gap that most of our community doesn't know that's going on. The rescue mission, the homeless center, St. Vincent's, They're wonderful organizations, but they're only open so many hours during the week. Sunday, there's a gap, and that's what we try and fill, is that gap that is not met. Our hungry normally isn't always homeless, because you can pay your bills, you can make sure your rent is paid, you can put gas in the car, pay your car insurance, and you still are short on money for food. So what are you gonna eat, you know? A lot of the people that we serve are on Union, are in Oildale, are in Old Town Kern. We don't judge. We hand out burritos to anyone who is hungry or homeless. That is what we are about.
Bakersfield LGBTQ was incorporated in 2005. We had our beginnings in 2003. You may have heard of the annual Gay Pride Festival. That's us. We have regularly been involved in political movements. We were involved in Prop 8. We have been involved in all kinds of advocacy and education things. We fight against bullying in our local schools. We are very much on the front lines of pushing for anti-suicide efforts. We always have been, but particularly lately, in the light of the loss of Jay Bornstein, we're going to be reopening that effort. Bakersfield LGBTQ is very much grassroots. We don't maintain a facility, so we're not looking for those kinds of volunteers. When we put out a call, what we're looking for is people who are willing to be on the front lines, just like you are right now, in front of the world, ready to take a stand to make a difference. As we move forward, because of the election, we have to double down. There may have been a sense in the last, I don't know, several months, I don't know how long it's been, that maybe we were a little complacent, that perhaps since, you know, we have marriage and we're beginning to move forward on the issue of trans rights, and, you know, things are starting to kind of come together, that perhaps maybe we don't need to work so hard, and maybe we can kind of sit on our couches and just wait for other people to do it for us. And ladies and gentlemen, obviously those days are long gone. And we have to get off our couches, myself included. And we have to be willing not only to speak out on those issues that affect us directly, but we have to be intersectional. We have to be willing to speak out for those issues that have really, we might think, nothing to do with ourselves personally. We have to speak out for people who are Muslims when we are not. We have to speak out for people of color when we are not. We have to speak out for people in poverty when we are not. Every one of us has to be willing to take that stand. And I promise you, on behalf of Bakersfield LGBTQ, you're going to see us on the front of those lines. We're going to be calling for you to help us as well, because we know that the new administration, while the president has said that he isn't necessarily dreadfully opposed to our issues, he is surrounding himself with people who are. Marriage is certainly at risk. Transgender rights, I mean, forget about it. In order for us to even maintain a status quo, we're going to have to work and work and work. And we're going to need some help, because if it's only LGBT people who stand up, well, we can't do this by ourselves. And we really, truly value our allies. We want to be intersectional with those of you who are not LGBT, and we expect to stand up for those things that matter in our community every day. Thank you.
I was asked to speak because I was in the Navy. I was medically retired as an AW2 after 7 years. I started as an AT, an aviation electronics technician, when I went in back in '90. And yeah, and through the midst of that was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And it was kind of hard, hiding who I was. After a few years of being in, I actually had a partner. And in our home, I lived off base, and in our home we had to make sure that there were 2 rooms established in case the military, which they had the right to do, in case they came to my house. I had to say, this is my room and this is her room. And we were roommates because it was illegal. And you could actually be thrown in Leavenworth for being gay. Most of the time they discharged you with a bad conduct discharge. We had some friends who actually were taken off their ships when it was found out they were gay because they were threatened to be thrown overboard. Exactly. And, you know, things like that over the years have become, well, you can be gay and be in the military now. So that's a wonderful thing. But the stigma was still there with some. But until, 6 months ago or so, you know, people who didn't want you there need to keep their mouths shut. And they were on the wrong side. Now, since November, people have found it okay to be threatening. And people are messing with my jive here. People are being threatened to be thrown off ships again. And we can't allow that. There's paper flying. We can't allow that, but the way to fight it is the way I fought it when I joined. Now, obviously, I wasn't gay when I was in the military, but I was a woman. I was a woman, and even back then, there were many people who didn't like women being in their Navy. And I had a Master Chief. When halfway through, I was an AT, and then I switched over to be an AW. I was there when they opened combat to women. And I was one of 10 women who went through a trial run with a school that would send women to fly S3s. They're a fixed jet, and I flew off the Nimitz. And 10 of us went through, and 5 of us graduated. Now they don't have the plane anymore, but it's kind of cool to say, hey, I was one of those 5. But when I got to that school, there was a Master Chief, and every morning I'd walk by and I'd say, good morning, Master Chief, and he would ignore me. He'd look at the ground and walk away. And that happened for a couple of weeks until he retired. He did not want women in his seat, so he left. Okay, that was great. Because most of the people that stood behind, they either stayed and accepted or they got out, and that was fine. And you know, there's other stories that, I mean, I got a ton of them. I'm a sailor, what do you expect? But at one point, I was at an E4, and there was an E2, and he's walking down the hall in front of me. And he looks over his shoulder at me, and then he says to his friend really loud, I think women should be barefoot and pregnant. You know, and he wasn't talking to me and this and that. And so I said, okay, that's his opinion. He's allowed to have it. So we were on our way to a smoke break. So the next day on the smoke break, I got a couple of petty officer friends. I got the maintenance chief, and I got the XO of our squadron. We all went and had a cigarette. And I said, hey, Airman blah, blah, blah. Call him Donald. How's that? Airman Donald. I said, hey, Airman Donald, would you like to explain your comment yesterday about how women should be barefoot and pregnant? And all these petty officers and these chiefs and the XO of the base, who happened to be women, all stood there. And I made him open his mouth and exactly say that. And they stood there, and I guarantee you he never said anything like that again. So, you know, so how do we do that? How do we do it? We stood together. You know, me alone couldn't have said much. I could have, but, you know, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. But getting the women in that squadron together and getting there and standing together is the bottom line. And that's why we're here today. It's to support those who support us.
Women's reproductive rights have already taken hits this year throughout the country by legislators, and so we are seeing that women are being demeaned by our so-called future leader. And we cannot just be stagnant and be complacent when we hear things like that. So we must progress, because it seems that we are moving backwards with some of the things that we are hearing in the media and hearing by our so-called leaders. And we have made quite a bit of progress throughout decades with women's rights and with birth control and things that are available to us, and they're trying to take things like that away from us. So we cannot be stagnant. So threats posed to reproductive health care do not just affect women. Men also seek these type of services. The services that are provided are not mostly abortion, as people like to make it appear. So really what we're doing is preventing, and we're helping people plan their lives, not just their families. Also, we have to consider that teenagers are not able to vote. So we are that voice for these teenagers. Teenagers usually speak to their parents and talk to them about these kind of concerns, but when it comes to sexuality, not all teens can do that. I was one of those teens that could not go to my Mexican parents because You just can't do that with your parents. They don't talk about that kind of stuff. So Planned Parenthood was there for me to help me provide means to plan my life. They provided me with safe, confidential care. And we must remember that we are that voice for them. So we cannot ignore that they are also affected by these irrational laws that are threatening our rights. Another thing that we have to think about is these organizations. It's not just Planned Parenthood, there's a lot of other organizations there. When they're talking about removing the Affordable Care Act, they're also talking about defunding Planned Parenthood. And that is defunding services like birth control and things that help prevent things that can, people will take extreme means to take basically their choice into their own hands, and sometimes it can be lethal means when we're talking about things that affect them, like pregnancies, unwanted, unplanned pregnancies. So these kind of laws are going to affect them that way. So what can we do? What can we do to make sure that we have autonomy, that males, females, teenagers have autonomy about their bodies? So what do? We donate. You can sign up to PlannedParenthood.org. You don't have to really go out of your way and give money and give time if you don't have it, but just simply sign up. They'll tell you who you can call. You can call legislators. You can write letters. You can donate time, even if it just comes down to filing papers, doing a lot of things, and PlannedParenthood.org will guide you. Even if you feel like, well, what do I do? What can I do? You don't know what to do. They'll help you. PlannedParenthood.org is an easy way, because donating to our community, donating to basically organizations like this is donating to humanity. And these organizations provide these type of services out of love for humanity and for the community. And if you really think about it, ultimately, love is a law, love under will. So don't stand still.